This is a special honor for me. Mike Milken, you won't remember that I wanted to meet you for years, and I tried so hard to get your attention. And I guess whatever I did didn't work. But you and I have now known each other for 10 years, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to have this conversation. I got to ask you, because I'm personally curious. You have the reputation for being the hardest working person in America, maybe on the face of the earth. I know you start your days early. What time do you typically open your eyes? I'm just curious. What time do you get up in the morning? Do you actually swing your legs out of the bed and start to function?
Sometime between 3:30 and 5 in Los Angeles, but 3:30 in Los Angeles is 11:30 in London, and it's 6:30 at night in Singapore. So it's really a question of how much you're thinking. As you know, a lot of us do our thinking in bed, and question is, time's up. It's time to get up. And these times where every minute costs lives.
So I got to ask you, but just before we get to that, we're going to do this whole program is going to be on COVID-19, its economic impact, its healthcare impact. You get out of bed some point between 3:30 and 5. I really want to know, what is the very first thing you read to find out whether the world has blown up the night before?
I really go online and start searching. And so it depends what the issues are. If I've been focused on a cancer therapy, I want to see if something has happened someplace in the world. In this case, I want to see what has occurred with COVID-19 therapies so that I'm current on that. Early, you're talking to Europe generally, or Asia before they go to bed. Eventually, you move into the East Coast and eventually to the West Coast. So you're adjusting to others' time. And my view today is that every day is a week. Sometimes every day feels like a month. And I can't stress, I cannot think of any other time in history. And I've been through a number of crises when every day is more valuable.
So I need to know, because there's a lot of news, there's a lot of misinformation. Of all the things you go to, not people, but places, newspapers, magazines, online, what do you trust the most? What should we look at and assume that is accurate more than anything else we see?
Well, this is an unusual time, so I'm much more focused on hearing it direct. What did a scientist someplace in the world do last night? What is the CEO of a pharmaceutical company going to commit? In general times, I read numerous publications. I'm probably reading 10 hours a day.
What first?
I'd say in the morning, because I wake up early, I'm really focused on news in Europe and focused on Europe because they're almost moving to midday. Or if it's a focus of something in our center out of Singapore, or the people in Hong Kong, or someplace in Asia, I want to make sure I've had a chance to speak to them before they've gone to bed in case we need to work on something. So I'm really more focused on time. There are apps today that allow you to read newspapers all over the world. So you can read English language pretty much from all countries. What is those governments saying? Rather than reading what someone in Los Angeles or New York has written, what does someone in Beijing have to say, or Tokyo or Seoul or Singapore? Those are very important factors today because you might understand what they want to tell to their own citizens, which might be quite different than we're hearing here.
Do you ever watch television, or is the news you consume print?
I watch, I would say, most things not live. So if I'm going to watch television or a show, I'm generally not watching it live because I can time shift today. And many, many years ago in the financial world, you woke up early and read the news, and you might have got the news prior to people on the East Coast. Today, people in the financial world read the news generally before they go to bed. So they're reading it before they go to bed and instead of when they wake up.
Who do you call typically before COVID-19 Would you call someone in the financial world? Who's the very first human voice you hear in the morning?
Probably mine speaking to the telephone from that standpoint, but I think it really depends on the subject. I'm pretty much on a lazy Susan. So we generally cover such a broad group of topics: economic development, what's going on in a city or a state, what are the issues in that city or state, public health, what's going on with nutrition, how are we dealing with the obesity crisis, what's happening with diabetes or heart. Today, I'm really focused on mental health and depression and what the repercussions are going to be. So it really depends on the topic. And what I try to do is really focus on that topic as if it's the only thing I'm thinking about, whether it's for 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or 20 minutes, so that I have my full concentration on it.
Okay, now this is a question that has arisen over the last few days. It's got political ramifications, economic ramifications. People are talking about when to open up again, when to engage again. We've got an economic crisis and a healthcare crisis at the same time. I'm going to push you on this. As of today, we're having this conversation on Friday. If we had to prioritize today, should we be prioritizing the human health challenge we're facing or the economic health challenge we're facing?
They're not really separate challenges, Frank. And the reason is you might open up, but no one is there. If we looked at what occurred in Macau in February, we had a situation in Macau where no one was diagnosed with this virus in 3 consecutive weeks. The people living there were getting antsy. I feel the Chinese government was concerned that they wouldn't comply any longer. So they spoke to the large employers and asked them to reopen their facilities. If I just took one as an example, the largest was Sheldon Adelson's. But if I took Wynn Resorts as an example, they have 13,000 employees. They were closed, they complied, they opened up as the others did. Maybe 5% occupancy. But you got the people out and you took away that issue. Unfortunately, the companies themselves were losing millions of dollars, in some cases a day, from this. But the issue of opening up is not independent from what the people are willing to do. And I think the world fully understands what needs to be done. We need to understand testing. Who's had the virus, who hasn't? Do antibodies work? Can I take the antibodies from one person and give them to another? How long do those antibodies work for? And so the first element I would say to you is the idea that they're not intertwined is not accurate.
Okay, then let's do those rhetorical questions you asked, because you talk to more scientists, more medical professionals, more people from the pharmaceutical and biomedical industry than any other human being, probably other than Anthony Fauci. So let's start asking those questions. When are we going to have tests for everybody in America? Because we don't have them now.
I believe we'll have significant tests in America in the next week or two. If you say to me, when will we have an abundance of tests? One of the things we've been working on, I think, as you know, Frank, about 2 months ago, reoriented all 10 centers of the Milken Institute around the world to work on this coronavirus, COVID-19. We divided our efforts into 6 parts. First was education. Second was prevention. Third was testing. Fourth was treatment, how we're going to treat patients. Fifth was control. Control first, then cure. And 6 was an economic and financial safety net. So your question on testing, our question was this: when can we ship a test to every single person at their house, not just at work? And will Amazon, we asked them, I personally visited with them, will they deliver them free to everyone? And will you get an answer at home, like a home pregnancy test, to know what you have? I think the people of our country and all countries around the world, what we have seen is just in a minor call, 400 or 500 people would show up who had the virus to give their blood with it, looking at these antibodies. So We're not there with a home test with a cost of little to nothing, but we will be there somewhere between April 15th and May 1st, in my opinion.
So actually, if I can do one more historic question, and then I promise we're going to be talking about the future. What was the moment that you took this seriously? What was the phone call or the meeting that you realized this is not just another virus or the flu, but this is going to be life-threatening to a lot of people?
We had a conference in South Africa on healthcare in February, and I had a chance to visit with many of our partners, Patrice and Precious Motsepe, who are putting it on with us. And as I left on that Sunday morning to come back to the United States, we had a serious conversation that South Africa would probably not be prepared, and Sub-Saharan Africa didn't have the infrastructure to deal with this issue, and that we all live in a glass house. People think that you're safe, the other person, that it's someplace else in the world. The H1 virus, the H1N1 virus, a number of people in the United States died. So this has been an issue. And when we said a generation ago that the defense companies of the 21st century would be the pharmaceutical companies, we didn't realize fully what that was or what it meant. But it is true with us today. So leaving South Africa, coming back to the United States, I had this unbelievable concern that we would not be able to stop this virus from traveling through the planet.
And as we face today, I want you to raise Faster Cures, because of all the organizations, this is the one that I believe in the most, because of the principle of collaboration and cooperation, of getting doctors who had been competitive with each other to start working together with each other. And that's what you've been active, and you and I have followed this for the last couple months. It doesn't seem to be the way the the government of China has operated, particularly in the first few weeks of January and the last couple weeks of December. Is that a fair criticism of them? Did they provide the information that we needed in the National Institute of Health, the CDC, the WHO, and all the other international organizations?
I don't believe now is the time to look back. It's the time to look forward. There'll be plenty of time to judge what happened and what didn't happen. We cannot deal with what didn't happen yesterday. When I wake up in the morning, I only can focus on to make sure today is different than the day before. At the level of a scientist, at the level of a clinician, there is unbelievable interaction between the CDC and all these organizations. If I just took one example, Rod Hochman's chairman of the board of the third largest healthcare company in America, provider Providence Healthcare. He's also the president-elect of the American Hospital Association. They have 51 hospitals in the 7 western states. They had the first patient really treated in America in Everett, Washington, in one of their hospitals. They actually do what's the rounds with Chinese doctors. They talk about patients together. What did they learn? And if you speak to Rod or the people at Providence, they will tell you they learned a great deal from talking to the doctors and understanding. The fastest in history, the molecular basis of this virus was sent out by Chinese scientists within weeks. Anyone in the world had access to the molecular makeup and got a chance to go to work. We have a vaccine that actually went into a human being in America on March 16th, the Moderna vaccine, small biotech company. BARDA, an organization that most people have never heard of, the Biomedical Advanced group here that's focused on development, and this is now a formal authority of HHS. They made an announcement just a day or two ago that they're going to provide $400 to $500 million in support to roll out this Moderna vaccine and build manufacturing capabilities so that if it works, you can give this to maybe millions of people this year, not next year, and next year, maybe tens of millions per month. So this biomedical advanced group that's been created by the federal government has moved. Faster Cures has interacted with both of them, with many others, and became a reality. But all of us are products of our life, Frank, you, myself, anyone. And I failed my father in the early and mid 70s. Here I could solve almost any economic problem. My financial theories worked out during what I consider the most important financial period, 1974 to 6. Could I share them with my father when he had a reoccurrence of melanoma? He really couldn't share. I couldn't share the success of my economic theories. I traveled to every medical institution I could in America, and within a year or two, I concluded that I could not, no matter all my contacts, everything, and what I was working on, that no one in the world would move science fast enough to save my father's life from melanoma. Today, it's a different story. A vaccine within 8 to 9 weeks. Every single bioscience, pharma, biotech company that I've interacted with today is working on this virus. They've opened up their libraries. Is there anything that's ever gone into a human being that might work? Can we control the virus before it evades other cells? Or can we stop the repercussions of the cytokine storm, the energizing of your immune system? And so if you say, what is the most optimistic message I can give you today? I have yet to speak to anyone in the bioscience industry that is not working on this issue.
So I got to ask you, so candidly, these are the people I do this with. I'm honest with those who are watching this. I'm still afraid. When I walk out, I now wear a mask. I walk every day for a couple miles, and I stay away from people, and I don't let anyone in my house. Are you afraid? Are you anxious about what? This is the week. This is the weekend. We both live in California. And if it's going to hit the peak, it's happening right now. Are you nervous?
No.
Because
I don't know what the word peak means. Okay. Today, we know a lot more. We know that the Gilead drug appears to have some substantial benefit today, even for patients in the most advanced state on a ventilator. We know many other things might work. What we do know is we know what causes this advancement, and we also know why people, for the most part, are dying. The whole generation in the last 3 decades of cancer drugs that have been created that energized your immune system, many of them caused a cytokine storm. They had to deal with your reaction. There is 10 to 20 forms of cancer that your immune system has never, ever seen. And so what does it do? It sends everything. That's how we were built. That's how human beings survive. It sends everything at that cancer. Think of it as the Army, the Marines, the Air Force, the Navy, and also the Coast Guard has all been sent at it. Now, this overloads our immune system, and this is what's happening with this issue with the respiratory thing that's led to so many deaths. So we know what happens because we've seen it in cancer, and we know how to stop it. And what we're doing right now is redirecting that technology towards this disease. What we need to know is, how early do you intervene? Do you do it at the first sign? How much do you do? How do you regulate it? That's what phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials are all about. We need to know when to give it to you. We need to know how much to give it to you. There's 70 vaccines. There's dozens of antivirals, antibodies, and immunology efforts going on throughout the world, not just in the United States, but throughout the world. When I wake up in the morning, you're asking me what I do. I get emails telling me they have the cure. They have the solution. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't get 5 to 10 of those. And so you have to run them down. Even though they don't seem to make sense, the stakes are so high that you have to make sure you've given every single a unique idea a chance.
There's been a lot of attention on the medication that's supposed to work for lupus. And people have had an argument over it where Trump says it looks promising, and then Dr. Fauci says, let's be careful. Do you have any opinion on it and its use for COVID-19?
So just this morning, Frank, I interviewed Das, who's the CEO of Novartis. They provide the second most amount of medical drugs to the world as we know it today. They've offered to give 140,000 doses. They're the largest producer, free. They're launching their own clinical study. It's going to be announced either today or tomorrow. They're going to figure out what is the right dosage, when should we give it. In some studies, in late patients that are advanced, it has not proved to be a differentiator. In some early. So you're going to have a complete, full clinical study done by Novartis on this issue. There's a lot of things that tell you early it seems to be working. As you look at the world today, you're wondering, all these different, they call them dirty vaccines. What is a dirty vaccine? It's everything in the kitchen sink been thrown in there, all these different antibodies. And this is what's been given to people throughout sub-Saharan Africa and other parts of the world. So these vaccines have all different kinds of antibodies. Will they prove to be a deterrent to this virus? But whether it's Novartis or whether it's when I spoke to Alex Gorsky, as the world's aware today, they've developed a technology that allows them to create millions of vaccines at the same time.
Johnson.
Alex Gorsky, CEO of J&J Johnson & Johnson. And what did they say? Along with BARDA, along with this organization, they're going to invest $1 billion and they're going to make this vaccine available free to every single person on the planet. So they have been studying vaccines. They bought this company, Janssen, in Belgium many years ago. What did they learn in Ebola and many other things? They're applying all that knowledge here. So whether it's Novartis, whether it's Johnson & Johnson, whether it's Sanofi, whether it's Regeneron, whether it's Moderna, or Gilead, there isn't one company. Early this morning, I did a podcast with the CEO of Amgen, the world's largest biotech company, Bob Radway. They're doing the same thing. They've gone through their entire library, the collaboration that we clamored for decades to not compete with one another. I have not found one group in the world that is not willing to collaborate today.
So let me tell people who are on this, and there are 157 people, that they can watch these podcasts, listen to these podcasts by going to the Milken Institute, that all of them are listed there. Decide which one you want to. They're about 15, 20 minutes each, and they're very powerful. Mike, you made a statement in my research for this that at least half, and I got to read it, at least half of all economic growth in the past 200 years can be attributed to advances in public health and medicine that led to longer, healthier lives. Could you ever have imagined so much economic deconstruction, so much destruction, so much, what a disaster this has become over the last 30 days?
I actually never imagined that, Frank. I could imagine disease, but the fact that you have no symptoms and can spread it, and it spreads so quickly, the decisions to stop this disease by stopping the interaction of human beings with one another, shutting down the economies around the world. There will be tremendous tragedies in families and people dying. But even a greater tragedy in economic terms, not in personal terms, is what's going on today. Millions of small businesses, entrepreneurs throughout the world are losing their dreams, what they had built for generations in some cases. They're concerned about, will there be an economy to come back to? Where do they stand? And so the question that's constantly been asked, is the cure worth more than, has it cost us more than the disease? And that is why When people talk about financial markets, etc., I've seen it all and I have studied it all in the last 200 to 300 years. And so, yes, people don't realize how important health and medical research is. Life expectancy in the world was 31 years of age, 31 years of age in 1900. We'd had added 11 years in 4 million years of evolution. Went from 20 to 31. Now we've gone from 31 to the mid 70s for the world, 1 out of 5 people in America died before their 5th birthday in 1900. Today it's 62 or 63. And we've forgotten in many ways what is happening. The doubling of life expectancy and also better quality life. So this is going to bring us back, in my opinion, to the core issue here. Benjamin Franklin told us, and our leaders centuries ago, that the wealth of a nation is the health of a nation.
So I want to ask you to put your financial hat on. I cannot understand, with the economy so destroyed, with small businesses under such pressure, with stores closed, restaurants closed, entertainment closed, sports closed, everything. And I'm going to give you some data on that in 1 second. Why has the stock market not dropped further? Why have we not seen a meltdown in the S&P 500? I don't get it.
Well, the market has lost trillions of dollars. I think the issue is, as an investor, you're trying to figure out what is value a year from now, not July 1st. Can these companies be sustained? And the government action has afforded an opportunity for many small businesses to be able to borrow money to sustain themselves. And the opening of financial markets has allowed other markets to around the world to open also, not just the United States. And as a result, companies have been able to liquefy themselves to give themselves more running room. But this has not affected every company or every industry equally. If you're in a grocery store, if you're manufacturing hand sanitizer, if you're Amazon delivering things, we forget how many things are working. The internet is working, and 25 or more % of our population can work from home on the internet. The delivery system is working. We're able to feed our people. You can go to the grocery store and get what you want. Entertainment is working online. Knowledge is working. You can ask Google any question you want and you still get an answer. Power systems are working. You turn on your light switch and it works. And the medical system is still working.
But Mike,
so we forget how many things are working. But this is a human tragedy.
So let me give you 2 statistics. Now, 1 out of 5 Americans believe that we are in a depression, and 2/3 of Americans believe that we're in a recession. And people then, when that happens, they close up, and they don't spend, and they don't invest, and they don't try. And my question to you is, has Washington done enough? Because we know that just over half of Americans do not believe so. They don't think that Washington responded quickly enough, and economically, they don't think they've done enough. What do you say to them?
I say the government hasn't stopped, and there's more to come. We cannot constantly say what should have happened in January, what should have happened in February or March. We're in April. I want to know what's going to happen in April and May and June. Those are the things that are going to determine. And when you say depression and recession, this is totally different. I saw the period in 74 to 76. I lived it. It was my clinical trials and an epidemic in finance, all my own economic theories. Interest rates doubled from 6 to 12%. People said, can we operate with rates that high? Today, interest rates are an all-time low. The stock market went down 50%. We rationed credit. I couldn't even loan money to you. Oil prices quadrupled. much different. We had the greatest liquidity maybe in the history of the world in February. Companies had more cash than ever before. Individuals in America were liquid. This recession, as you talk about it, is not a financial recession. It's been brought on by a virus that spread throughout the world that we need to stop. And if we can stop it, and whether it's another month or 2 or 3, we can start to return to normal. And once we're convinced that we're safe, as you see what's occurring in China today, factories are operating at 85% from being shut down in January. 3 months later, people are on the street, but they are wearing masks because they don't know for sure at the moment with testing what is happening. We will return. And I think we have to stop looking back and look forward. We need to get more capital out there.
I'm going to look forward. I got 2 questions for you. Both of them are from the people who are participating. Number one is, I've been asked to define the new normal. I know from the polling that I do that we're going to buy less, we're going to go out less, we're going to interact less. How do you, from a financial perspective, define the new normal? And then, second question is debt. The government is spending money that it does not have. It's spending trillions to shore up the economy. And we are going to run up the biggest debt that this country ever has had. Question number 1, what is the new normal? Question number 2, are you at all concerned about our federal debt?
Let's take number 2 first. When 90 or 80% of all Americans buy a house, they want to know what their mortgage payment is. When they go buy a car, they want to know what their monthly payment is. When they buy a capital asset, they want to know what is their monthly payment. That is a function of interest rates. In Japan, with interest rates are 0. If the government issues another $1 trillion in debt and pays 0 interest, what is it costing? Someday it owns it, decades from now. The United States government can borrow at the lowest rates it ever could in history. In 1981, the government was paying 14% for 30-year debt, was paying 18% overnight. Today, overnight, they can borrow at 0. Let's say it's going to cost the U.S. government $5 trillion to bridge this economy until it's open again. At 1%, that's $50 billion a year. And so we need to get real as to what is relative value. We have to shore up this economy, and the government needs to make that investment. And because interest rates are the lowest they've ever been in history, the annual cost to the government, with $20 trillion in debt, 1% reduction in interest rates, we can calculate what that is. That's worth $200 billion a year to the U.S. government. So it's not the amount of debt, it's the interest rate that comes into play here. And interest rates are the lowest they've ever been.
So it's okay for the federal government to continue to write these big checks into the economy and to backstop municipal bonds and the various markets. That's okay to you.
It's okay to support the people of this country. These entities, a company has employees, they have families. What's going to happen? Is it going to exist for them to come back to? Do I believe it's essential that they get money to families to live and to companies to survive so those employees come back? Yes. And the cost to the government, if the government borrowed $1 trillion in 1981, $1 trillion, they were paying $140 billion in interest for 30 years. Today, on $1 trillion, the 30-year, I'm assuming, is somewhere around 1.6. I don't know for sure. It is less than 10%. So $1 trillion in 81 costs more than 10 trillion would today to pay interest. So I think we need to focus on this safety net. This is going to end. We are going to have vaccines. We're going to have antivirals. We're going to have antibodies, and we're going to deal with your immune system. This is a bridge. And the bridge, the cost of not bridging is too high for our society and our way of life.
So you say we're going to come back, and I believe you. And I won't ask you the date because that's unfair, but I will ask you about the new normal. What does this mean for our economy? What does this mean for financial services? Because I know you've looked towards the future. Can you define the new normal?
I think everything is a simple answer. We have lived with telemedicine. There are individual hospitals that have more telemedicine visits in a day today than they did in all of 2019. It was going to happen, and it's accelerated. Conferences, meetings, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, whatever it might be. We are used to seeing each other like you and I can see each other today, Frank. So more meetings will be telemeetings. Education. I was visiting with Steve Ballmer, former CEO of Microsoft. His son goes to the University of Michigan. Steve's son was in Australia on his year abroad for the University of Michigan. University of Michigan notified all students to return to the United States. So he's at home in Seattle right now, going to a university in Australia online, where the courses count for the University of Michigan. Education, healthcare, entertainment, interaction, meetings, sharing of documents, everything has been accelerated. So that's the first thing. Never is the longest word in the English dictionary. The idea that people will not congregate again is wrong. The idea that they're not going to go out to dinner to their favorite restaurant is wrong. The issue is, when will they want to do that and be safe? That answer is a healthcare medical answer. As soon as they know that it's safe to go out, they will go out. Look at China today. Look at the videos from the Bund in Shanghai, crowded with people. Thousands and thousands of people are back out. They're still wearing their mask. Are the kids all wearing masks? No. Are they out there playing soccer or basketball? Yes. Humanity as we know it will return. And I think what we've seen during this very, very difficult period is how giving individuals are. You see constantly young people in high school and college wanting to know, is there a senior citizen in the neighborhood? Can they go to the grocery store for that senior citizen and bring them their groceries? Can they go to the drugstore and bring them their medicine? This is the social fabric of this country. And so when we talk about what are the true assets, first, it's the productivity of individuals and the human potential, as you referred to it, Frank. And second, it's social capital. As we move west and settlers, when you saw a barn built in Oklahoma, everybody in the community came out. They didn't ask for money. They helped you build your barn, and you helped them build their barn. And that's what you're seeing today. You're seeing a willingness, and you're seeing the true nature of individuals. Americans are the most generous people in the world.
But I got to, again, going back to the people who are on this call, is this not a transfer, a generational transfer, that the people are simply taking money away from the kids to pay for the social and economic costs of today?
Your question, I guess, is, are we passing on government debt to our children?
Yes.
When a country can print paper, what the value of that paper will be in the future will determine. The value of the individual, the value of ideas. When they found the polio vaccine, which I got in April of 1955 as an elementary school kid, that was given to charity. Johnson & Johnson has already told you if their vaccine works, it's free. Novartis has already told you if what works for lupus or malaria, they've got 140 million doses to start free. So I think this issue is, can we get through this? The devastation of a family. Just think of a small, successful entrepreneur in a city in America who took care of his family and was a philanthropist in his little town. Now he's lost his business. How does he feel? How does the family feel? What are the mental health going to exist every day to day? Just think of it as a week or a month. If we can shorten this, we can make it through.
So, Mike, the last topic is putting your investor hat on. Should we be looking at these new innovative startups, those companies that have come together in the last few weeks or few months? Should we be looking for the tried and true, the bigger companies, those with healthy balance sheets? As you look towards the future, and we've had a number of people have been asking the question, do I go for tried and tested, or do I try to find those new green shoots that are developing every day?
You should always go to the future, Frank. And tried and tested, that industry might be eliminated. But I would say to you, this is a period to be safe and make sure you have financial liquidity for the next few months. I wouldn't be trying to figure out how to make money off this tragedy, this human tragedy. Right now, all I can think about is this is not like any other economic period. I could have told you in 1969 and 70 what to invest in, or 74, 76, or 08, 09, I could tell you it was just going to play out like 74, 76. Today, the economic decisions are totally tied in to health and medical research. This isn't a pure economic. This challenge that's been inflicted on the world did not come from economics. It came from a virus that spread around the world and has the potential to take people's lives. The second we know that we have a solution and it's controlled, the world will change the next day. And so many diseases, such as cancer, I can tell you you're into remission. There is no cancer in your body and it's not coming back. So this is that type of a disease that we're going to find a way. And if it's coming back in 6 months or a year or two, I'm confident that we'll have a solution for it. Our most important period is tomorrow, the next week, and the week after.
And I want people to go to the Milken Institute website and you type in podcasts, and you'll be able to hear Mike's interview with so many people who are working in faster cures, who are working for the pharmaceutical and the biotechnical and are making a difference every day. You'll be able to go more into it. Mike, I got one more question for you. You've had a special relationship with Major League Baseball for a number of years. How did that get started, and why does that matter so much to you? And I pray that we're going to have baseball this year.
I want to talk first about sports, Frank. Yes, 25 years ago, we went to Major League Baseball with this idea of keeping dad in the game. And we would talk about getting checked for prostate cancer and the importance of raising money for cancer research. And I already had my schedule for this year, all 30 stadiums over a period of weeks, and to go to the Baseball Hall of Fame. But this is really the national pastime. We chose it with the idea this is one of the few sports you can go to a ball game and talk to your father, your grandfather, your grandkids, your great-grandkids, your buddy, etc., the person you're at work with. And this is a very interesting sport because Lori's father, in the last 5 to 10 years of his life, he looked forward to the Dodger game. every Dodger game he listened to. And so the group that's at most at risk here for the virus and the potential side effects are people that are older. For many of those people, there's more baseball games than basketball games or hockey or football and soccer. They're every day. And it made a big part of their life. And listening to when Vince Scully was announcing for decades. Also, sports is another thing. When you look at a newspaper and you ask people, what did they read in the newspaper first? They often read the sports section. Why? The front page of the newspaper generally documents things that went wrong, something that happened that was terrible. Okay, you can go to the sports section and your team could win. How many thousands of times have you heard people say, we won? Were they a player? Were they a manager? We won. It brought something positive into their life. So for so many people, listening to Jim Gray tell us about sports was an important part of their life, and they won. Just look at the parades where millions of people come out when their team wins. And so sports is more than just a sporting event. It's something that you felt you were part of, and you might not win every day in your life, but if your team won, you felt you won. And so the loss of all these baseball games is a lot more than a game from that standpoint. It's something that's a large part, and it skews older and it skews younger. Think of the millions of kids that aren't playing Little League, which starts generally this month or in May. And what's happening, and this generational issue of kids, parents, grandparents going to a game is missed, and sharing generational interaction. So sports isn't just the sport. It's the family interaction. It's a social thing that's so important. For me, I've done hundreds of television shows and radio shows, and the death rate from prostate cancer since we started this has fallen by 80% from projected levels and 52% from actual levels. And it's probably the best awareness program that was ever created. And so am I going to miss it? Yes. But it's hard for me even to think about baseball right now until we get back to the new normal that you asked about. So I didn't answer it fully. Tele everything, but I think in human interaction is going to become more important to be able to say hello to someone. Lori and I, our 3 children, our 2 daughter-in-laws and 1 son-in-law, our 10 grandchildren. Yes, we can see them on Zoom, but can I hug them? No. Have I been with them, for a month and a half to 2 months? No. And this is an important part of life, the interaction from human beings. When you go to those podcasts and talk, and I talk with the CEOs of these large companies, what are they most worried about? They're worried about communicating between their own employees with one another who might feel isolated. And so they're very concerned about communications, that people feel part. And so whether it's a session just to tell jokes to each other and laugh, or to compare recipes as to what you're doing, or remind yourself what it's like to make your own bed, vacuum your own carpet, and clean your own house today. All those notes and comparisons. I noticed with Lori, her friends from college, her friends from high school, they get together every other day and talk to each other and laugh and talk about, just to get some sense of normalcy.
And
but we will return.
And that's why we do these calls every week. Mike, you don't even know what I call it, Fridays with Frank. And I do it, it's relatively late at night. We've been on for almost an hour in the East Coast. It's almost 8:30. And I want to thank you. And there's been a running conversation going with some of the participants as we've been doing that. And I'm grateful. And if anyone's going to find a cure for cancer, if anyone's going to keep people alive, If anyone's going to find a cure for the economy, Mike, it's you. You're the smartest person I've ever met, and I've worked with some very bright people. And next week, I'm going to have Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader of the House of Representatives, for us to do a little bit on politics. But Mike, I want people on this call to know this, and I don't want your emails, and I don't want your sympathy, and I don't want your food baskets because I can't eat it anymore. But Mike, you saved my life. I had a stroke in January, and I went back to my old behavior. And those of you, the reason why I've got a beard is I can't use this hand really to shave, but I've lost 39 pounds because of Mike Milken. I am sitting here today because of Mike Milken, because it is not just on a grand scale, it is on an individual scale. Mike, when you grab me, and I don't like to be touched, although even that has changed, but when you grabbed me by my shoulders, looked me straight in the eye and said, "Stop killing yourself," you saved my life. And I want people to know that whether it's on the personal level, whether it's on the community level, whether it's on the national or international level, you are one of the greatest people alive today. And I'm grateful that you're alive. And you got to get more sleep. And you got to take care of yourself. And you got to we need you because of all the great things you're going to do. And I'll end by saying we lost Steve Jobs too early because he didn't take care of himself and all those things that he could have done. And Mike, you probably weren't supposed to be here because of what you went through. And you have saved so many lives. And we are also grateful for what you've done. I'm going to give you the last word, but God bless you, Mike Milken. You got the last word.
Frank, thank you. I just want you to understand, it's not me. There's millions of people behind me standing shoulder to shoulder that are working. The Milken Institute, our Faster Cures group. There's a whole group of people every day that revises every vaccine, every antibody, every antiviral, every immunology. What's happened? It's moving along. We created a place that they could go. It's leadership, Frank. One person's not capable of doing everything. You're capable of leading and showing by example from that standpoint. And I say to this not being able to save my father's life and help save an economy. Okay. I didn't make that choice. I tried to save both in the 1970s. And that has lived with me today. I moved an entire group across the country in the late 70s so that our two children who were alive, Lori's and mine, could see my father before he died. It was 9 months later that he died. There are these failures, but this is a different world. We should not be scared, Frank. You should not be scared. The idea that you could have the molecular makeup. In my day, DARPA was formed so we would never be behind in science. NASA was formed so we could go to space. And BARDA, that I'll actually give you the correct. The B is for biomedical, A for advance, R for research, D for development, and A for authority. Very few people have ever heard of it, but they are playing an important role. And yes, I would say the Gates Foundation has probably done more than any foundation in the world to help fight our efforts here and fight COVID-19. However, it's not money. Far more is giving of your time. Every single person on this planet, whether they have $1 or more, can give of their time, help a neighbor in need. And this is the strength of our country. In 9/11, I was in New York and left after a few days. And we have this educator award program that exists. And I traveled the country afterwards. And what did I see? I saw the Friday night football game in the community. I saw how important that Sunday church service was. I saw families helping families. And that's what this is about. It's about humanity.
Mike?
And this disease does not know whether you're a billionaire or you're worth $1. It doesn't spare you.
So Mike, hear me, hear us, hear everybody on this call. Mike, you've done your father proud, and we're grateful for your participation. And everyone have a wonderful Friday. Have a safe weekend, and I'll see you all next week. And Mike, thank you for your time, for your
And
effort.
Frank, let me know when you go over the 40-pound loss mark.
I'm trying so hard, Mike. You got to know I am. Thank you, everyone. Good night.